Tomorrow, contractors, business leaders, and hundreds of others will rally in Albany to call for changes to the Scaffold Law. This is a law that is more than 100 years old, and it mandates that employers must be completely responsible for any, quote, elevation-related injuries. Advocates have been trying to get the legislature to put some restrictions on this liability for many years now. They argue it would greatly reduce the cost of both public and private construction projects in New York. So for no movement here, but maybe this year. To explain more, we have Mike Elmendorf of the Associated General Contractors, Tom Cote of the New York State Association for Affordable Housing, and Tim Walker of the insurance broker Willis of New York. Welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So we'll start with you, Mike, since you're the veteran here. You and I have talked about this many times.
Many times.
What's different this year?
Well, there's a lot that's different. First of all, for a long time, this has sort of been viewed as kind of our problem, right? The construction industry's problem and the insurance industry's problem. And that never was really accurate, because it really is something that impacts everybody, whether you're a school district, a local government, a farmer looking to put up a new structure on your farm, a small business owner, a homeowner who's buying a house, who's paying a lot more for that house because of this law. Really, everybody in our society and our economy is losing because of this law, except for the personal injury trial bar. And when you look at what's going on,
which is very powerful. We should just put that as an aside.
They may be very powerful,
right?
But I would like to think that all the rest of us are at least as powerful, if not more powerful. And when you look at the issues that are out there, economic competitiveness, job creation, the need to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure, the property tax crisis in New York State, all of these things would be advanced by common sense reform to the absolute liability standard of the Scaffold Law. Simply what we want is that contractors and owners have their day in court. We think the facts should matter. When there's an injury on a job site, whoever is responsible, whether it's a contractor who didn't provide the right safety equipment or training or a safe job site, or a worker who may have contributed to their own injury, those facts ought to be heard. They should matter, just like every other area of tort law. It's fairness.
Okay, so what you're suggesting is now what we have is the new element are developers, right? And Tom, you represent an organization of people who build housing for people who need housing at an affordable rate. But there's a huge calculation that you have to do there, and one of the things that you have to factor in is the cost of this particular liability, right? So how much less do you think you could do projects for if this in fact was reformed?
Well, the cost in and of itself is very high, and it goes into the application process. So if you actually think about the cost savings that the reform would actually save, the additional capital could go towards things like additional units for low-income families, better amenities in the projects. It could also go towards things like expanding opportunities for minority and women-owned businesses and better community facilities for these families. So it really is kind of like a best practices for New York State if you consider the entire country, and we're the only state that doesn't have these reforms. And on top of that, it's really the winning strategy for economic development and job creation.
And on the insurance side, I mean, how much of an impact on the industry are we talking if in fact these changes are made?
Significant. The best way to say it is that when you look at what projects used to cost to insure just a couple of years ago, generally would be between 4.5% and 5% of the total volume. So if you did a $100 million job, it would be $4.5 million to $5 million. That has now virtually doubled in the past couple of years. What has also happened is smaller contractors now have had their rates double. Just recently, as in last week, we had a contractor who was up for renewal, who had a $450,000 premium that's jumped to $950,000. But is that
all because of Scaffold?
Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely.
There's no other outside pressures that cause insurance costs to go up?
Nothing like Scaffold Law.
Well, why is that?
I think the best way to look at it is that anytime an insurance company looks at a project, they want to be able to have a fair, playing field when they're trying to defend cases. What this does is impute absolute liability. There is no day in court, as Mike said. Essentially, it's not whether these people are going to get paid, it's how much they're getting paid. And if you look at this compared to New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, it's a 300% difference between what you're paying here and what you're paying in other states.
So do you have any idea how much more construction and development of affordable housing would happen here if this were to be changed?
There's not a concrete number, or at least savings number yet, because we actually don't know the amount of savings that would occur. Because if you think about how high the cost is, we'll have to see what when the reforms go through and what the actual compromise is.
Okay, so what we
Well,
have
I think
now,
there are some numbers, though. I mean, you know,
Okay.
Tim can speak to this as well. I was at a meeting last week talking to folks who said they think the price differential between building something in New York versus building it in Philadelphia or building it in New Jersey, which all things considered are not that different an environment, save for this absolute liability standard, is north of a third.
Yeah.
It is very significant. And you know what you know Tim's talking about, what's happening is, for a long time you've had the economic arguments and the job arguments. They haven't changed. If anything, I think they've become stronger. But you've had just recently, in the last 6 months or less, some real bad changes in the liability insurance market for construction. You have, for instance, in New York City, some carriers that are writing an exclusion of coverage over 3 stories of elevation. They won't cover over 3 stories of elevation. You've been to New York
Everybody's
City. Your
nodding.
viewers are familiar with New York City. I mean, the impracticality of that is, you know, is on its face
Okay.
obvious. So you may not even be able to build
Okay,
certain
hold on.
projects.
So we're
because of
looking. I'm
this.
looking at this Reform Advocacy Day, et cetera. You're going to have a rally, and the people who are carrying the bill are now Assembly Majority Leader Joe Morelli and also Patrick Gallivan, who is a majority member. Well, sort of. He's a Republican in the state Senate. We have this power sharing thing over there. Do you believe that Morelli is actually going to be able to move this piece of legislation now because of his increase in power in the legislature, in the Assembly?
I certainly think having the majority leader on the bill sends a powerful message. And one of the things we're going to be doing tomorrow with the lobby day is meeting with legislators who aren't on the bill to encourage them to sign on. Having the majority leader on, I think, sends a signal that it is a lot safer to get into the water than it used to be. And I can tell you, having talked to him about this, you know, you can ask him to handicap the chances of the bill, but he is very, very committed to this.
Does it not set up a push-pull battle between himself and the Speaker? And
Well, you know,
who is criticized for being a trial lawyer, has
Yeah.
been in
Well,
the
there's a
past.
lot of trial lawyers in the legislature. You know, I mean, personally, I like the Speaker, but you don't have to agree with him on every issue, and just because he has a certain view on an issue doesn't mean that that has to be how it goes. I mean, he, if you'll recall, was opposed to the property tax cap initially. And, you know, the other thing really that we're looking for is the governor's leadership on this.
Well, I was going to ask you that. Go ahead.
You know, there's no question that if the governor gets behind this, and he should, because it aligns with virtually every one of his priorities: improving the economy, rebuilding infrastructure, creating jobs, and really just sort of more broadly reforming things that have sort of festered out there endlessly and that people have concluded you can't do anything about. And I think you could fairly, for a long time, put this in that category. I don't think that's the case anymore. The governor can really enact an historic change if he gets into the fray and helps us get this done.
The governor has argued over the 2 years that now he's been in office that he has made New York open for business again. And I'm just curious, from your standpoint, from the two of you, because we've heard from Mike before, if you believe that that is indeed the case.
Personally, I do believe, I mean, this Cuomo era that we're in reality, this is something he could do to advance a better economic agenda, business-friendly agenda in New York State. I do believe that.
I completely agree. I think when you look at developers, when you look at public sector entities, this would greatly free up what they could do. You could have more schools built, more subway stations built, more hospitals built, just by reforming this law.
I know the last time we talked about this, we talked about the issue of the injured worker. I mean, and from the standpoint of the person who gets hurt, critics would say, well, changing that, this protects them. That's why this is here, so they get the full benefit that they are entitled to.
But we're not taking that away. I mean, if a worker is injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, they will have an opportunity, and this will still treat those types of injuries different than the rest of workers' comp law, where if you get injured at work, it's a workers' comp case. That's where your issue is dealt with within the workers' comp system. This would still maintain a separate right for workers to sue, but you would have facts that matter. I mean, I realize this is a radical idea that the facts ought to matter in these cases. They don't matter right now. And so you get bad lawsuits that are brought with huge, I mean, you wouldn't believe some of the judgments that you get. And these are damages only proceedings. I mean, because again, the facts are not at play. And then you have people certainly that are legitimately injured as a result of somebody else's negligence. They would still be able to recover. Trial lawyers are very capable people. They can go to court and prove a case. I believe that they can. I hope they believe that they can. I'm not sure why they continue to maintain that they just need to be able to win no matter what the facts are. If somebody is hurt as a result of somebody else's negligence, with the reform that we're proposing, they would still be able to sue and they would be able to recover. And that's just fair.
Well, we will see. Obviously, I want to thank you all. Tom, thank you. Mike, thank you. Tim, thank you very much for being here. I do appreciate it.